Welcome back to Hot Take, everybody. Today we are in a 2003 Audi S8 D2 generation in Ming Blue. This is just one of 100 Ming Blue Audi S8s in this particular interior color, and just one of 300 Audi S8s for the 2003 model year that made it to the United States. This is actually a car I didn't really know existed until I saw this one. This was supposed to compete and beat the BMW 750iL from the same year, the E38 generation. This car has a 4.2 liter V8 making 340 horsepower and paired with a 5-speed automatic transmission and Audi's Quattro all-wheel drive system. This is also one of those Audis with the aluminum space frame, which was supposed to be designed to prevent rust. A lot of little cool quirks about this car. It's a very interesting car. Let's go ahead and take it on the road and see how she rips. Some initial impressions, the motor's very torquey, which of course you expect from a big 4.2 liter V8 in a luxury car. It's got a very nice V8 grumble to it. Other impressions, the ride is extremely smooth, which is also to be expected from a car like this. But it feels very big. Some cars are large, but you get in them and they kind of feel, they don't feel like they are their size. But this car, you absolutely feel it. The hood feels long and wide. It takes up a lot of space on the road. That's the impression you get from it anyway. Kind of let the oil get up the temp a little bit here. The transmission's very smooth. You hardly feel the shifts. Although I'm noticing that the transmission is very keen to try to drop your RPMs very quickly. The brakes feel adequate. The pedal's alright. It's got good modulation. It's a little soft when you get into it. We'll get into it more later in the test drive. Hitting some bumps here now, and you actually feel them a little more than I would have thought, which does make sense. I mean, this is an Audi S8. This is supposed to be the sporty A8. If you wanted pure luxury, you wouldn't buy an S8. This car is actually lowered 1 inch from a stock A8 ride height, which is kind of surprising. I feel like a lot of cars from this era didn't have that much of a drop, but I could be wrong. The owner had mentioned to me that there's a little guard that kind of hangs down on the front, and it's not uncommon for you to scrape it in this car. There's a lot of overhang over the front wheel. Driving around in this, it just kind of feels really classic. I do like the gauges here, the font, and like the color, the center stack here. Very 2003. That's honestly the best way to put it. It just kind of feels really in period for this car, especially the Audi gauges. I mean, this was a staple of them for many years. Though I haven't actually driven a lot of Audis in this era. Been around them, but I don't think most people can say they've driven an S8 before they've driven an S4. But so far, I'm loving it. The torque is really nice, and I will say, compared to an S-Class or 7 Series of this era, this feels a lot sportier, especially the transmission. Like, it feels a little less slushy than those do. It's a very nice experience. You also get these little buttons here for downshifting. We'll throw it into sport here. Alright, maybe I have to, hold on. Yeah, the buttons are actually pretty responsive. It's also funny, they give you two buttons that both are plus and minus, because they didn't really know yet like how people wanted to do paddle shifters, or that they didn't really think about paddles. So they give you 2 buttons here, and you can press down on either of them or up, which is kind of cool. And then you also have this here, and this is the wrong way to do the manual shift to automatic. It actually doesn't really matter, but BMW always does it the opposite way. But it feels good. I like the slap shifts. Also very in period. Of course, it's nothing on any of the modern cars, but I mean, if you want to throw it down, you throw it. It grabs your gear. Ooh, the gas pedal has a lot of travel. I thought it was doing half throttle this whole time, but I actually got to move my seat up a little bit. There's a lot of distance in this gas pedal. Makes a very nice noise up at 6,000 RPM. Very classic, old school luxury car V8. It's been a long time since I've driven an S-Class or a 7 Series with a V8 in it, but last I recall, it sounded very similar to this. Almost like the very quiet, like, hum, as opposed to you hearing the engine. Kind of way, you really don't hear it until you get around 4,000 RPM, and then you almost get like just the slight kind of sense that there's a V8 there, but then you look at the speedo and you're going really fast. She's quick. Oh, that engine feels really athletic when you get it all revved up. It's funny, once you get to the top, up at 7,000, it kind of has that minute, like, and then it revs back down. Because it is still an early 2000s luxury car slushbox transmission, but oh, that's a lot of fun. This thing definitely gets out of its own way. The steering feel on this car is, it's a little light, and I mean, it's kind of floaty, but for a car like this, it's not bad at all. And what's interesting is this car is about how I expected it to drive. It's kind of like the perfect blend of executive, big luxury vehicle, and sportiness. They still have all the appointments that you'd want, like even you have heated seats and a dial in this thing. I'm not going to turn it on right now because it is hot today, but that's awesome. And we're going to stop talking about that for a second. And ooh, that's what this car likes. Likes those long, sweeping turns. That's what you have one of these cars for. It's not a sports car. You don't throw it into a corner, mash the brakes. You come up to a corner, you lay it out on half throttle, if you can find where half throttle is, and then let the car do the rest. Here we go, we got some turns up here. We're gonna try the manual mode again. Try, let me slow down a little more, try 2. First has a lot of torque. So in normal automatic mode, I noticed that the car won't really ever put you into 1 unless you mad at going like 5 miles an hour or less. And I now see why. It kind of just grabs second, because this V8 has enough torque to get you rolling, so it doesn't really need 1. And actually the gearing does feel a little long, but I think the only reason is because it revs out to 7,000 as opposed to like 5,500 or 6, which is what I imagine the non-S version, the regular A8, probably has its red line at. It's probably where it shifts. Of course, this is all speculative, but in short, this is a great package. Test the brakes a little bit. Oh, they stop nicely when you need them. I wasn't looking at the tachometer, but based on audio cues alone, I don't think we touched over 3,000 RPM in any of that. Just to give you an idea for how much torque this V8 has. Of course, I also don't drive a lot of cars that have this many cylinders. this back in the Sport. Long fourth gear. And even if I had the option of a manual in this car, I don't think I would go for it. This transmission's actually pretty well paired with this engine. And the all-wheel drive, maybe I'm not driving it hard enough, but I can't really tell if it's helping me or not. I'm sure it is. Adding the gas pedal downhill in this car is pretty fun. So I do want to go back to the ride for a second. It's pretty firm over a lot of these bumps. Not in a jarring way, but more of in the sense of you have more driver's feel than a lot of other cars from this era. A lot of other big luxury sedans tend to insulate everything, but this being the Sport model, I think that you can tell where they kind of tried to insulate you less from the road, but they didn't sacrifice the supple and comfortable ride at all. It more or less just offers you a more connected experience, and I kind of appreciate that out of this car. Something else I just learned is when you have it in manual mode, the automatic transmission will not do anything as far as shifting gears, with the exception of slowing down, so it won't stall itself. But if you put your foot down in a high gear in the manual mode, it will not kick you down like a lot of other automatic transmissions do. Kind of adding on to that more driver control and driver interaction in this car. I don't think giving it revs to trying to help it downshift makes a difference. Getting into the brakes again. Yeah, the downshifts are pretty slow if you try to kind of drive it like that. Alright, now the last test we're going to do is going to be an automatic transmission kickdown. So I'm going to start doing this with automatic transmission cars. I'm going to go, maybe about 50 miles an hour, and then lay my foot into the pedal, and see how long or responsive the transmission is to a kickdown. I would say that's pretty responsive. Third gear is a really nice gear in this car. You have a lot of torque. I would try to specify an RPM range for the power band in this thing, but the power band is all of the RPMs. You have torque at 1500, you have torque at 6500. There is no point in this power band where, I said power band a lot. There's no point in the rev range where you're lacking power and you wish that, I was at this gear, or at this point, this RPM, whatever. It doesn't exist in this car. This car is just always enough. The 340 horsepower, honestly, I'm gonna say is a little deceiving because it feels faster than 340 horsepower. It feels like there's a lot more there. I would have to see a dyno graph, but if I were to guess, I would say that 340 horsepower is across the entire rev range. I mean, not literally, but it's a pretty linear power band and it doesn't really die off. Voicing over the hot take today, the D2 S8 is kind of a weird car that doesn't really know what it wants. Whether it's a sports car or luxury sedan, whatever this car is classified as, I enjoyed pretending to be a business exec in 2003 for a couple hours. Now, onto the score. Utility. The D2 S8 is very spacious, plenty of room for front and rear passengers. The ride quality is good and wind noise is low. Not as good as the S-Class or 7 Series of the era, but it still gets a 7 out of 10.
Features. The D2 S8 has a lot for its day. Heated seats on a dial, parking sensors, and more. The materials are very high-end. Nice wood, leather, minimal cheap plastic. I would score it higher, but it is missing a lot of modern car tech like a heads-up display and touchscreen. Still, it gets a 5.5 out of 10. Fuel economy. The D2 S8 gets 13 city, 20 highway for combined of 15. It gets 3 out of 10. Cool factor. These are extremely rare. With only a handful made for the world, it is unlikely you will see another one on the road. Pair that with its classic styling, generally fun package, and you have yourself a classic. The rarity, though, is a double-edged coin. Most people will not know what it is, and you will blend in with traffic. Some people might like this, but balancing both sides of the coin, I'll give it a 6 out of 10. Driver's feedback. While the Audi S8 did the best it could for the time, it still has some glaring issues. These include the delay in the transmission response, steering on the vague side, and a mushier brake pedal. The suspension communicates nicely once you get used to the car, but at first it feels big and unwieldy while cornering. It gets a 3.5 out of 10. Acceleration. The D2 Audi S8 does 0 to 60 in the high 5-second range, giving it a 5 out of 10. Should you buy it? The Audi S8 is a complete package. Furthermore, this car is not expensive at all. The average one sells between 10 and 20 grand, which is a bargain for the amount of car you are getting. But in comes the maintenance cost. You have expensive consumables and an expensive all-wheel drive system. I think to the right person, this is a solid buy, but to someone unfamiliar with this type of car, it could get old very quickly. I will give it a 7.5 out of 15, putting it here on our list. The closest comparison right now is the E60 M5. This car is a lot easier on the wallet than that car, which says a lot about the M5. But it doesn't quite hold up to the more modern high-performer V10 M5. It will be interesting to see how this car stacks up against the W220 S-Class and E38 7 Series when we eventually review those. The D2 S8 was Audi's swing into the sports luxury sedan market 20 years ago. Even if the initial sales numbers don't reflect it, I think Audi made a car that drives better than its competition.